So let me tell you where we are. Unit 4.0 is a very quick one, and I just wanted to mention this. Some of these pieces are very long, some of them are short. This is a shorter piece. But just some categories that are useful. They're familiar to you probably. They're intuitive at a certain level. So it's the distinction between formal, non-formal, and informal education modes. These are modes or modalities. I think we all know what formal education is like because we've all been through years of school, and they're tearing down the building next door. Or maybe this building? I don't know. Were they supposed to tear down the building today? Why did we hold this here? I don't know. Okay. Formal education we're all quite familiar with, right? The non-formal, what I mean is also, we're very familiar with this form, workshops, seminars, conferences, those kinds of things. There's a ton of those, right? The church does those, your business does that, schools do that, there's everybody does this, right? It is a whole, in a sense, mode of engagement and mode of learning to itself. And then the informal sphere is much more relational, much more personalized, much more on-the-job training to be mentored by somebody, to be an apprentice with something. That is much more the dynamic of informal education. Okay? So we won't go through this particularly in great detail, but what you see is, if we're going to take more time with it, my point is that each one of those has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. Right? No one mode of education fits all. Not one mode can accomplish everything. Right? So formal education has certain wonderful strengths, and it has certain liabilities. Right? It tends to be good at certain things. It's not good at everything. It is good at theoretical knowledge. It is very good at comprehensive knowledge. It is very good at setting standards for things. It's very standardizable. It's very transferable. It's all good, right? It tends not, ultimately, usually, to be particularly good at whole person formation, and it is not particularly transferable. It tends to be very expensive, tends to set the bars very, very high. It's not easily accessible. So, strengths and weaknesses, right? So you can accomplish certain things in formal education you can't with other means, but you can accomplish through other means things you can't accomplish by formal education, right? So conferences are good, right? And conferences can be opportunities for learning, right? However, everybody who's ever been to a conference, which all of us have, I'm sure, church land is full of conferences, right? You've all been to church land, right? It's a strange foreign country that you visit, and you don't usually have to show your passport, but it's quite interesting. They're good for certain things, particularly stimulation, encouragement, excitement about one or two big ideas, fellowship, in-depth learning. Usually not a whole lot goes on. Honestly, really, as someone who speaks at these things, I know how that goes. So good for certain things, right? Short-term purpose, highlight something, good. I always think if people can go away from a conference with one really good idea that they're going to understand and stick with and pursue, it's been a success, right? So, and then the informal tends to be a bit neglected, right? And I think is very, very powerful, both in the workplace and also in Christian circles and in the church. If anything, I'm more of an apologist for the relevance of the informal level than I need to be an apologist for anything else, right? Partly for biblical reasons that I'm going to show you in just a minute, but partially just this business of transformation that is working its way from the head through the heart down into the hands and the feet, right? This is my famous little diagram. That's the heart. Here's our person, right? So ideas are good up here, and there's all the ideas being poured into the hat. But where the mentorship and apprenticeship and accompaniment style of teaching goes, is it goes to this level here more readily than it goes up here, right? Formal education and lots of other content tends to come through other means, through formal education, through this sort of conference, through reading, through other things. But the value of the mentorship and apprenticeship model is the ability to connect up head and heart and ask the question, what does this mean to you? Why does this matter to you? Are these your values? How are you living your life? Which is getting at the question, I need to draw some hands, don't I? Some arms. Yeah, the person had no arms there for a while. So they have very long arms and very short legs, which is a bit of a misshapen person, but that's only because of my artistic lacks. But the mentorship accompaniment is always asking the question about the hands and the feet. What are you doing with this knowledge? What are you doing with this project? What are you doing with this growth goal that you have? How is it going for you? Are you taking the knowledge and actually caring about it such that you can actually put it into action, right? So what happens is, from my standpoint, sort of philosophically, is action is a result of the fusion of the head and the heart, right? In order for action to take place or transformation to take place, it's got to work its way all the way through the system so that it gets expressed. Right? So the apprenticeship mentorship piece is very important at the level of building some accountability. Like, what are you doing with this? What does this mean to you? Are you living this out? Are you applying this? Right? That's the level really of the heart, the values, the dispositions, all those things that we listed, right? That's what the mentor who comes alongside, who cares for you, who's well suited to you, that you have a trusting relationship with you, can come along and say, when we met a few weeks ago, you are going to be working towards this as the goal. Where are you with that? Right? Are you making progress, or are you going backwards about that? Right? So partly the insight there is that people grow, whether it's in a workplace context, as a job training thing, whether it's for a personal goal, whether it's for a very spiritual goal about growing in their faith or growing in prayer or whatever it is. They grow when there's both a supportive environment and a challenge, right? And there needs to be accountability about those things, right? We're not going to grow or change very much unless there's some structure of accountability around it. And most of us as human beings don't really want that. Right? We'd rather not be accountable, especially if we say we want to learn and grow in these areas. We'd rather be kind of left to muddle on and not be too accountable about it. But the way that accountability works best is with someone who is a trusted guide, mentor you can be apprenticed to, who can come along with lots of support and lots of encouragement, but also lots of challenge. Okay? So back to something I alluded to this morning, I think people can go very far and very deep down this road of transformation and growth and change. And if you want to push people very significantly towards deep levels of change and transformation and growth, they need to have a strong sense of support around them. They need to have a lot of encouragement. They need to have a lot of hugs. Right? Because sometimes you're going to need to potentially give a bit of a kick in the pants. Right? Right? You're going to have to say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like what we were talking about. That doesn't sound like what you committed yourself to. That doesn't sound like the goal that you set for yourself. Right? So high levels of support, high levels of encouragement go along with high levels of challenge. And that's where this personal mentoring, apprenticing, accompanying all becomes so really, really important. I think we undersell it often. We often undersell it in the value of that in the church. Right? Some of you have had the sort of relationship with the kind of spiritual mentor or discipler and seen the power of that, will recognize it, but that's pretty rare. At least in our part of the world, that's pretty rare. But yet the power of that is very significant. Right? So overall, the sense of this is also a making of it of your own, allowing it to be absorbed deeply so that it ultimately gets acted out. Right? So what I'm interested in is the change that goes deep enough to be enacted in a new way of living, a new way of behaving, a new way of relating, new way of working, whatever the context is. Right? So of these three different modes, each one has their own strength, their own weaknesses. Nothing is sufficient unto itself. And the more variety there is in the ways that you engage something, probably the better off it's going to be. All right? That's my argument.